You have to imagine that your money, the money you deployed went to zero. Feel that.
Yeah.
Do you want to kill yourself? And if you're really emotionally distraught, well then you're investing too much. Put a little less in. Okay. If you could deal with it, you can sick to your stomach, but it's not like you're going to be massively depressed for a long period of time and traumatized. Then you're talking about that's the amount.
Hi, and welcome to the Flat Bill Investors Podcast. I'm Josh Siglowski.
I'm Zach Spencer. We're happy to have you today. Today, we are really lucky and blessed to be surrounded by a guy that you will know if you have lived in Utah for any amount of time. You might know him because he loves you and a bunch of other things you might have seen. But we've got Dan Young today. Dan, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Dan.
Hey,
Appreciate
guys.
you, man.
We love having you here.
Just like he said, PC laptops and seen all the commercials. I was a little giddy the first time I met you because I was like, man, he's like a TV star in Utah. So, and then you're just down to earth.
Well, I think
fun.
before social media was so popular and people like being goofy on TV and stuff, like you were catching eyes by like doing these crazy commercials that like people didn't have Instagram or doing that stuff. So you're an innovator there and in other ways.
For sure.
Fun.
There was you and the Totally Awesome computers, right?
Yeah, Crazy Dell. Yeah.
Crazy Dell. Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys did some crazy stuff and
They're crazy.
it brought customers in, and now you have how many stores?
7 stores. And then of course our online is doing pretty good too.
Nice. And what year did you start?
92.
What got you into PC laptops? What were you doing before?
Unemployment. So I worked at
Start
a
something?
computer store,
Okay.
which was like a Best Buy type of thing. And they went out of business. So I got a list. I asked my manager, hey, can I get the list of all the customers that I sold computers to? He's like, sure, bro, we're out of business. And so I just called all of them. And I said, hey, you bought a computer. If you need help, I'll honor your warranty. Right. So just, if I got I got you in the computer here. And so the first year we lost 27 grand in the red.
Yeah.
And I was just driving out to people's homes a lot. And then the second year we did over $1 million in rev.
Wow. Look at that.
Quick turnaround.
That's cool. I didn't know that. This is the first time
Crazy.
you told me. Yeah.
We call it adoption. It was adoption.
Yeah. Did you, because I know you do computers now, but did you only do laptops when you first started? Or did you do both?
Both. Yeah.
Okay. You still do both. Cool.
That's a great segue into some of the questions we want to ask you today about just adding value. Because it seems like you're the king of figuring out a problem and solving that. As we
People have problems, right? You got to help them.
Yeah.
And as the older I get, and the more I go, hey, I hand my phone to my daughter and go, hey, how do you do this? And my 10-year-old daughter goes, Dad, you just do this.
Well, more and more people are buying online too. Like
Yeah.
you just mentioned, like that the online sales is doing really well. You know, when I contacted you last year to buy my son a computer, all I needed to know is like the specs. I don't need to go inside, even though I picked it up, technically I'm in Utah, but if there was a shipping opportunity, I would have just had it shipped, but
Yeah.
because I think a lot of us, we check when we want to buy something, the first place that we check a lot of time is Amazon.
Mhm.
Right. And it just changed that way. And I think when you saw the opportunity of computers in general, of the way that was going to happen, you said, what year did you start at?
92.
92. I mean, geez, I think about 92 because I was born right before 80. So I'd been 12 years old and then like hanging out with my buddies, having AOL nights of like dial up, and I remember thinking like, man, this is the
Computers
future.
were pretty new in 92. Yeah. I mean, you're again,
really
an
new.
early adopter.
First computer I got was 1977.
Is that an Apple IIe?
Apple II Plus. Yeah, my dad is an artist, so he designed the Apple marketing brochures and things like that.
Oh, wow.
And so he brought home a bunch of free computers. He's like,
Did you grow up in Utah?
in Los Angeles.
Okay.
So he's like, here, take one. So I'm like, well, okay. So played some video games.
Yeah, they're good games on that one.
And obviously I follow you on social media. We're friends and stuff, but you're a big family guy. So does your parents live here now?
My parents passed away at 22.
And I know you have 3 or 4 kids.
2 kids.
2 kids.
2 kids.
It's hard.
They're all grown up.
Where are they? What are they doing?
So my son, he's awesome. He imports heavy equipment, excavators and things from China, but he's also in charge of all of our purchasing for our company. So he buys hundreds of millions of dollars, brings them on big ships and from all over, from Vietnam, China, all over Asia, into the US, like a distributor almost. And he's great at that. My daughter is an artist. Her name's Naya. So follow her, Naya Grem.
You've shown me her
Instagram.
work.
Yeah.
That's cool. Naya what?
What kind of medium?
Naya Grem. So she does digital art, but also sculptures and paintings and oil and everything.
Wow.
And but she's done some great stuff. In fact, yesterday, Steve Aoki called me and he needed help with his crypto, right? We're old friends. And he's the one who actually helped her get her launch into stardom on the internet. Because during COVID, we went out there and had her on his YouTube. And she made him the sculpture, and he was showing everybody, "Look at this thing!"
Oh, that's sweet.
It's funny because
we love Steve.
So I didn't know who Steve was until I watched this show. I'm a big person that watches the That Built series,
Okay.
like the food that built America. And this episode was about Benihana and TGI Fridays.
Oh yeah.
I was like, we're watching it, and I didn't know who Steve was. And on your social media, you showed Steve. I was like, oh, okay. And then I'm watching the show literally like 3 days later. And I'm watching this episode, and it's talking about Steve Aoki's dad, who started Benihana. You know,
I
Yeah.
think I remember that happening.
He's the
I don't know
guy.
story,
and
yeah.
then it talks about the very end that, you know, he had, I think, 7 or 8 kids. And one of them is Steve Aoki, who's a famous, you know, DJ and now in Vegas and like all around, and is famous for throwing the cake in the crowd. Now I know who he is. But it's so funny. And you hear that story and you're like, wow, it's such a small world, you know?
Yeah.
I bet that was kind of interesting upbringing for him, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, he's got amazing talent. He's very grounded, nice guy, and just a good dude, though.
Well, okay. So this begs the question. You know, you say Steve called because he wanted help with his crypto.
Yeah.
So tell us how you got from computers, and how did that transition? Like, how did you get into crypto from just doing like laptops and PCs?
By
and
mistake,
like
almost going bankrupt. So in 2014, our COO authorized a very large purchase of computer hardware, graphic cards. Way too many.
Okay.
And they had already come off the ship, right? And I'm like, we have so many graphics cards. It's going to take us like 3 years to sell these.
Wow.
And they'll be worthless in 3 years. Yeah. So I was like, what am I going to do? So I have a customer who's a professor at the University of Utah. And he came in and he bought a bunch of computers for students to mine this thing called Bitcoin, right? He's like, so he gave me this USB key.
What year is this, by the way?
14. So he gave me this USB key and he's like, Dan, this key is magic. I'm like, why is it magic? It scans every crypto out there and it calculates the amount of electricity that it takes to mine the crypto. And so Bitcoin is actually not the best to mine, and it'll find the least amount of utility cost for the most amount of crypto. So he goes, you can have it and use it and make millions from it. I'm like, millions? Crypto? I go, Bitcoin's like $170, man. I'm like, where is this garbage going? He's like, dude, try it. So I'm like, I came up with this crazy idea. I'm like, well, we have over 4,000 GPUs. Let's hook them up.
Oh, wow.
Plug this little thing in. And the first coin that it starts mining is Dogecoin.
Oh, wow.
And this is in 2014?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So we're mining Dogecoin, you know, and just pumping out all this Dogecoin. And that's how I got into crypto by mistake. And it turned out to be a good thing. So a little luck, little blessings from above, you know, and it turned out well. And it was a great thing is, so then everyone started, Dan, you got this big facility here, right? So all these friends of our entrepreneurs were like, can I buy some of these rigs? So we actually had to order more graphics cards to build rigs to sell to like crazy guys like, you know, business owners that just want them. So one guy, his name is Ryan, he owns this coffee chain called Java Joe's. He made me this testimonial video. He made his barista chicks, you know, the chicks who make the coffee, put these 12 array miners in every Java Joe's in the back room. And they'd have to see how much money they were making and let them know and all this stuff. And so the dude, he loses his password. In 2021, he texts me, he goes, dude, I lost my password. I think I have a lot of Dogecoin, dude. Because it went up like crazy amounts.
So then he's worried about it because now it's...
Dude, yeah, he's stressed out. And he goes, I think I texted it to you. So I go back to my iMessage.
No
I'm
way.
like, you wouldn't be that stupid. So I look, and there it was. So I sent him his password.
How much did you charge him for it?
Just
kidding.
The miners were like 28,000.
No, he said for the password.
For the password. I know, I'm kidding.
know.
I'm kidding.
So he goes, let me log in and see. And he makes me this testimonial video. He's something like, the video says something like, it's paraphrased. He says, I've been doing coffee for decades. And Dan has made me more money. He just goes off. And he's like, and he didn't steal it either. I sent him the password and I'm like, his seed key was a big seed key. And, but that's kind of the funny stories. But the cool thing is I think we have these kind of opportunities now.
Yeah. Well, then you got into, because we talked earlier before we huddled in before the pod today, but You did it you mined from 14 to 17, right? And then you sold off some of your portfolio in 17. The one thing that we talked last podcast was the returns people were getting. Because I don't think people fully understand sometimes, especially we're going to go over what you're doing now as far as the Ugly Unicorn Fund, the possible opportunity for the returns for people. What I mean by that is like a lot of people are seeing returns and they're seeing, I want to get 12% on my money, whatever that is, real estate or whatever. But from 14 to 17, you don't need to say the number, but
I'll give you a number.
On the percentage, what would be like 10x, 20x? Like what'd you kind of see?
Our average basis was $350 a Bitcoin.
Okay.
To mine it, as electricity cost. The exit in 17, the top of the market was a little over 19,000 at Bitcoin.
Yeah, because nobody that year thought it would break 20. They're like, it'll never break 20.
In 17?
We're at the peak of Bitcoin.
So $350, let's say to 19 grand.
And today we're, what do we do? December 3rd, 4th?
90 something.
And
Right?
we're 90,
almost 100,
90,000 plus. We're almost close to, we're tapping 100,000 actually.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
That's nuts.
So you start at 350 a coin. And then by the time you exited some of your portfolio is a little under 20. So from 17, you talked about, you just kind of got into it. You kept some of your portfolio, and then you come up to a lot of your friends, and your friends are saying, "Hey, dude, I need you to trade for me. I need you to manage my money." Right? You thought about it for a little bit, and then when did you decide to start your fund, and like what was kind of the motivator for you?
How even did you get to that?
Well, I helped people. They saw I made the money. And a lot of these guys who bought miners from me suddenly were sitting on millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions, these crazy money, depending on how many miners they had.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, what do I do with all this? And I'm like, what are you doing, Dan? And I'm like, so we would go to coffee and we'd be like, well, I'm buying this and I'm buying this. And there's this new token named Solana. And there's, it's cheap. It's, this new one called Ethereum. And it's cheap.
That's what your shirt says today.
Yeah. So I would just help them out. The problem though is when there was bad news or there was, whatever it was, I couldn't call every single one of these guys and be like, dude, I'm selling. It's impossible. So a few years ago, it was like 4 or 5 years ago, I met Bridger's dad, Bridger Pennington, my fund partner, his dad, John Pennington Jr. We're driving up to some mentoring retreat. We're supposed to teach these young men and women like about.
And just so the audience knows, John Pennington's a big portfolio manager, or was. He retired.
I think the fund that he created now is over $40 billion.
Yeah, at one point, I mean, it's big. It's large. 40 billion is a big,
pretty
number.
juicy.
Yeah.
So he just says, "Hey Dan, what are you buying?" And I'm like, I named a few. I didn't know, but I guess he put a very large amount into it. And then he made a ton of money. And then he goes, I think you're onto something. And so he's like, instead of like talking to all your bros, why don't you do this on a large scale with a hedge fund? And he goes, I run a hedge fund and it's huge. And so his son Bridger is super smart with hedge funds. He goes, why don't you just 50-50 with my son and you get my advice for free? I said, well, I couldn't afford your advice. I mean, you have billions under management.
And Bridger's son at the time is 27, I'd say, right?
Yeah, young.
2 years ago, yeah.
So we start the thing, and I couldn't believe how much money we raised. We're just talking. And it was mainly those friends talking to friends going, hey, Dan's helped me out for 5 years. And so it just kind of perpetuated. So
yeah, and then for full disclosure, I'm part of the Ugly Unicorn Fund. And my biggest thing is I originally, and I talked to Dan about this before, it was about 2021. I wanted to get into Bitcoin. I didn't know how much I wanted to get into. I just knew I wanted to get into it. But also there's some education, and, going through, he talks about the pass key. Like right when he just said that about his friend, that's the first time I heard that, was like, oh, that's exactly what I was going through, because I had a guy come over. It's a friend's son, flew out from Mississippi and sat down with me for 3 or 4 hours, and we went over our passcodes. We got, registered on probably about 3 or 4 websites, and then I put some money in. And I remember thinking, because he was like, do not lose these passkeys. And people are trying to steal it all the time. Like it was all this like gloomy news, honestly. And I was like, okay. And I was like in and out, but it wasn't something that I couldn't put a lot of time into because I have my time in other things. I was searching for someone that managed my money, whether that was a fund or not, and this popped up and I was like, hey, I want to really look at this. And I didn't know Dan at the time. I just knew Bridger and, looked into it and was like, yeah, this is something that these guys are, good at what they do. And like anything else, it's a risk, but it was something I was willing to take. Let's talk about the different cycles. You saw the cycle from 14 to 17, And there's usually about a cycle, about 4 or 5 years. And right now
we had 21 cycle, right?
Yeah.
And now we're in the next one.
Yeah. So tell us about that, what the cycle looks like now, and what you're thinking, that predictions and what's already happened since you've.
First, the cycle is called the Bitcoin halving. That's where the mining difficulty becomes twice as hard. So it creates scarcity in Bitcoin. Bitcoin's the largest dominant asset in crypto. Where we are right now, though, there's been a big run up in Bitcoin. So right now it's like low, almost mid 90s. And I'm predicting, my crystal ball is broken, but probably a pullback into the 70,000 range. That's normal. And the reason, there's a thing called Bitcoin dominance. Bitcoin usually floats around 60% of all crypto that exists. So 60% of it's Bitcoin. But it's dropped now to less than 54%. And the reason why is smart money starts selling it off. They're not telling you, but they're selling it off, and they're moving it into other tokens, large, mid, and small cap tokens, because it's already run up, right? So then recently you saw Ripple take a very huge rise, and a few other tokens. Dumb money is buying a lot of Ripple right now, and a lot of Bitcoin at the top, right? And not saying they're dumb long term, but if they buy now and they get a 30, 40% correction, or 20% even, they're going to get traumatized and maybe get scared and sell, and then not engage anymore. That's where we are now. So really, a lot of the money as of today is probably going to be made mid and smaller cap.
Gotcha. So for the audience, because I don't really know the answer either, but because everyone always thinks Bitcoin is the thing, but it's crypto is the name of it, right? And Bitcoin's a coin underneath it. How many coins are there? One. Two is, if it's okay, like, is there like probably top 12 coins you're looking at most times, or 30, or?
We hold over 45 positions in our fund.
Okay.
As far as it goes, though, those fluctuate a lot depending on news. So let's just talk about a couple that have run up. Ripple, XRP, XLM, which is Stellar, has run up, right, significantly. And another one called HBAR has run up significantly. Let's just talk about those three because there's so many. The reason why they ran up is 2 reasons. There's a big lawsuit against Ripple that the government SEC was doing. Now, with Trump in office now, and the old SEC chair, Gary Gensler, resigning, the new SEC chair is very pro-crypto. So there's a good chance that a lawsuit may get dismissed. That's catalyst 1. Catalyst 2, Trump gets on there and he starts saying, well, I'm thinking about taking things like Ripple, an American-based cryptocurrency, and not charging capital gains on it when people make money. So that's
which is wild. Yeah, that's big.
So then it's like, that's number 2, right? So those things really cause big rises. And then obviously once institutional buying, and then the third catalyst is many large institutions are now talking about launching an ETF on the stock exchange for Ripple. So that's 3. So all those 3 things, you add them together, it's great, right?
Right.
And so that's what causes these rises, is just news, trending news.
Yeah, well, I want to kind of lead off of that. It's a great pivot point into something you mentioned a second ago, which is when people buy on the ship's sailing and they're reaching for, they're on the wrong side of the cycle and they get traumatized, you say. One question I've got is, you'd mentioned kind of before a couple of things that you'd want to see in an investor, right? If you're an investor looking for this, what are some of the things that are going to help you kind of have that cool temperament? You'd mentioned kind of, emotional control and a few other things. Yeah. For those listening that are thinking, okay, maybe I want to jump on this. What are some things that will help be able to weather the storm?
If you're going to buy tech stock or crypto or any investment, if it's volatile, if it's real estate, if you know your due diligence, the math is pretty simple and boring and 200 years old mathematics. Right?
Sure, yeah.
Like, okay. But for like volatile tech, which this is tech or AI and things, you have to imagine that your money, the money you deployed, went to zero. Feel that.
Yeah.
Do you want to kill yourself? And if you're really emotionally distraught, well, then you're investing too much. Put a little less in. Okay. If you could deal with it, you can stick to your stomach, but it's not like you're going to be massively depressed for a long period of time and traumatized. Then you're talking about that's the amount. Another thing people can do is just dollar cost average, right? So let's say they want to invest 100,000 or 10,000 or $1 million, whatever they are. They could put it in tranches. They can divide it up over a certain amount of time, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, a year, and then they can have different entry points. So maybe there's a correction and,
I think everyone's different. Yeah, I like those two examples because like I just listened to you. I'm more the second one because the first one, I don't think until people actually lose the money, it's one thing to say like, oh, I haven't invested yet. I'm going to put in $25,000. But that's fine. If it goes zero, it's fine.
Until it goes to zero.
Until it goes to zero. Because I've had that happen.
Yeah.
You literally can't sleep and you're sick to your stomach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're thinking about like, oh, I just, took my kid's college away, overnight. So there is that. That's for me.
Yes.
Everyone's different. But number two is I think it's good to, if that's that same 25 grand, like, you know what? I'm going to put 5 grand in now. In 90 days, I'm going to put another 5 grand and then maybe another 10 in 6 months. And I think for me, that's more of my play. Because that's kind of spreading it out and that's getting more disciplined because the chances of 25 grand leaving over a year period when I'm putting tranches in, I think is a lot lower than something that could happen overnight and then just have that
Also,
system.
99%
build up a little temperament toward it too. You might, get a little, but what were you going to say? Yeah.
99% of our investors think like you do, in that they're like, hey, we're going to put in 200 grand, 500 grand. But these are people with huge, vast fortunes, some with billions, right? And they're like, let's just see how you do for a few years, man.
Yeah.
It's funny is then when things you start proving yourself through time,
Yeah.
then it's like, okay, here's my family office manager. And actually we're going to have 10 more of his acquaintances in there and we're going to go large because you've proven yourself through time. You have a track record.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Bridger's dad's the guy with that. He goes, look, first year you're going to raise some, you're probably going to do really good. He's like, give it 2-3 years, go through some cycles, go through a bear market. Actually, we're most proud of 2022, the year of our fund launch, because the Bitcoin dropped 77% during that year. And for that year, our fund adjusted a little over 17% negative. And people go, negative? And I'm like, well, in the same time period, we did significantly better than the market. It actually was like 47% when the time period, because we launched like in June of 22. And we outpaced the market significantly well. And people were like, well, how'd you do that, right? And the cool thing with our crypto is most people, they hold crypto and they pray that it goes up, right? Just like, imagine buying real estate, buying a building and you pray that it goes up.
Yeah.
But if you're not collecting rent on your real estate, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you got to collect rent. So with our crypto, this is kind of an interesting concept, but a lot of people don't understand it. We use our crypto, we provide it to exchanges, and they use it to provide trades for their customers. Now, usually they keep most of the profits, but in this case, we keep most, and then our investors get those profits back. And so what's cool, it's like if you bought a piece of real estate, and you've been collecting rent for 5 years, but it dropped 25% because the market kind of tanked. You got all that rent that you collected.
Yeah.
That mitigates your risk. And just most people don't know how to do that because it's pretty tough to do.
Yeah.
So that's what we do a lot.
Yeah. Besides John, do you have other advisors?
A lot of old mentors in
Okay.
their specific field.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Everyone's got you got your emotional mentors. You got your
nice. Yeah. It's good
real
to have them all.
estate, your
Spirit
tech
guides.
mentors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've told me about one of your mentors, but for the audience, why is it important to have a mentor? I mean, someone that's in your stature that has success in 3-4 different companies, maybe more, but like, why is it still important to you?
And there's a guy named Mike. He's my neighbor, and he's been my mentor since the 90s. And incredible guy. He sold his company for $2.6 billion in 99. That's a lot of money back then. Net to him, I think something like 170 million upfront plus like 400 million in stock, publicly traded. So that's a lot back then.
Oh, for sure.
And he said, do you need a mentor? And I said, yeah. And he said, I need one too. And I go, what do you mean you need one? He goes, my relationship with my kids is terrible. And I want to be able to connect with them. And my kids love you, dude. So we could be friends and I could help you with financial matters. And it's landmine avoidance, he called it. He goes, look, I've got my legs blown off and I'm still alive and I've grown them back. I'm just going to, when you're doing big moves, you just call me, run it by me, and I'll just do some diligence for you and tell you yay or nay, at least in my opinion. Talk to a couple other guys that have been through it. So I usually call 2 or 3 guys on a big decision. And
landmine moves.
Yeah.
I like that.
A landmine avoidance. I love that.
Yeah.
So you just don't get your legs blown off, because if they know where the landmine is why step on it.
Yep.
I see all these influencers. You win by failing and failing and failing. I'm like, no, you're failing and failing and failing because you're a dumbass and you're not talking to your mentors who are old.
Yeah.
We've already gone through it.
Yeah, you're still going to get hurt. I get it, scuffed up, but less fatal landmine lands if you talk to the old guys.
Yeah.
You know?
Why not, what's it called? Mitigate your risk, by talking to someone. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's cool also with like we're similar, right? Era. Like call other friends that are experts in their their area. And then you're like, hey bro, like, what do you think about this? You've dealt with this guy before, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I love it. So it's probably about time to be wrapping up. So as we close, what's like one golden nugget? Like if somebody goes, what's one thing that you would hope that somebody takes from listening to you?
I think we talked about that in the pre-roll. I mean, the big one is just have clear goals physically, financially, spiritually. Write them down, right? Be very clear, and then have them scheduled on your phone for daily execution in those areas. I think that's hypercritical. Emotional control. But if you're strong physically, spiritually, and financially, it's a lot easier to be emotionally controlled.
Yeah.
Right. And then also the people you surround yourself with. If you have drunk friends that are on drugs and are getting divorced 6 times and cheating on their wife and stuff, like those are probably not the dudes you want to hang out with because you'll become like that.
Yeah.
And if you're hanging around with people that are like Master Yoda, like Bridger's dad or Jeff Flam or some of these crazy 30, 40 years of consistent winning, even through losses.
And good through all their life too. Not just business, but
just hang out with those people.
Totally.
Hey, I want to give one last tip of how to find mentors. People ask me this at the gym all the time. Dan, how do I find a mentor? Do I pay them? Are these influencer dudes I paid for a 20 grand course, the mentor dude?
Yeah.
I'm like, sometimes, but probably not. I'm like, this is the hack. Go and look at the bougiest nursing homes in your city. So I know for my parents, I paid $12,000 each a month to put when they were in the retirement home. And then I upgraded. I was paying $22,000 a parent. That's a lot of dough, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
But man, they got catered food, personal nurse. It was just killer. My dad's like, it's like living on the Love Boat. This is great.
Yeah.
So you go to these nursing homes and you bring a whole bunch of stuffed animals and you ask the director if you can hand them out and just talk to the residents. Because most of these older people that are paying $20,000 a month are very rich, but their kids are douchebags and never visit them. You go there once every 2 weeks or once a month and visit and ask them, tell me about your life. They're so bored, they will tell you every secret to the universe. I've met 5-star generals, CEOs of billion-dollar companies at these nursing homes because I visit my parents.
Yeah.
Free mentorship.
And now, think about what that does to their life too.
You want to hear the craziest? Here's the craziest tie-in. I told this to one of my employees, and he started doing this. And he was the only one guy that did out of 100 of my employees. So he was friends with this old man there for like 6 years. And he's like, I just love this guy. He's like, and this kid actually had money and he was actually doing good. He just wanted to learn computers, right? His family was wealthy. What happened though? He's like, dude, I got an attorney letter after the guy died and he left me his whole estate.
No way.
He says, I was the only guy. None of his children ever visited him. And I visit him every month. And he said, you are now my adopted son.
Wow.
So by giving,
now that's a hack.
That is a hack.
By giving, I'm not saying they're going to do that.
Don't go into it with that in mind. But
no, but he was just totally surprised. I go, what are you going to do with it? He's like, give to charity, maybe, build a company or something. And
I think
he left and went to do his thing.
The quality of life for those guys that have somebody to talk to now probably is they're ending their lives with a much better.
But Josh, don't you ever get this?
That's awesome. I love that. That's crazy.
People will go to you and me, like business dudes that are doing okay, and be like, "Hey, teach me, give me." And it's like, dude, just go to my Instagram and look at what I need. Like, what if your daughter has a soccer team that needs a sponsorship, and it costs $50 or $100 to get your name on the shirt? Sponsor the darn thing. Like my daughter makes art. Go and buy a piece of art and say, "Look, buy one of your daughter's art pieces, dude. It's so cool."
Yeah. And that definitely touches you as a dad. And for sure.
Free mentorship.
Golden nuggets. I love that, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for coming, bro.
Hey, can we get one? We love you for the camera.
We love you.
We love you.
We love you. That's what it is.
That is. Okay.
Well, awesome. Awesome, Dan. Thanks for coming and appreciate you being here.
Let me. Can I give where people can find me?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
So just go to Dan's Millionaire Code on Instagram. Make sure it's blue check, and I'll never ask you to send me money or anything. But just go there and follow. And I actually don't use any employees to manage my messages, and usually I'll message you back.
Dan Millionaire Code.
Dan's
Dan's
Millionaire
Code.
Has a picture of him on.
And then all the stuff what we talked about with his laptop business, Ugly Unicorns, probably on your page.
It's all
if you
there.
wanna find
Yeah.
it. Well, awesome. Well, we're wrapping up. Like we always say, invest in your future.
Invest in yourself.
This is the Flat Bill Investor Podcast signing off.
See ya.